Welcome everyone to our October, well, it's actually our September, but we bumped it into early October, Agile Boston virtual event. I'm Joe DeAngelis, the operational leader of Agile Boston. I'm joined here today by a couple of my leadership colleagues from the Agile Boston leadership team in Brea and Pooja, Pahwa. Say hello, guys. And
Everybody.
hoping to see Dan here shortly. But this topic today is about the Competent Scrum Master. And the idea popped into my head after the podcast I had with Martin Hinshelwood, where in Martin's opinion, the market is just changing and it's moving towards competence. That for the last couple of decades, we've had a big boom and in the desire to be agile, to be Scrum. And that boom has, outweighed the number of competent people that can actually go and teach organizations how to do this. And as a result, a lot of organizations have spent a lot of money on what they call transformations, and what they ended up with is nothing any more than what they had before. And so they asked the question, why do I have all these Scrum Masters and why do I have all these things? And with the economic downturn, they've been forced to make cuts. So that's one explanation as to what possibly has happened over the last couple, recently, I should say. So this talk is about, let's take a step back and let's think about the role of Scrum Master. And let's think about, what does it mean to be a competent Scrum Master? Someone that a company would look at and say, hey, this person adds value. This person has helped us move forward. This person has helped us get to where we wanted to go, our vision of what a transformation meant for us. And so that's what the gist of this conversation is. Ian or Pooja, I'd like to invite you to add anything to that.
I think that's a great kind of frame up, starting place for the conversation. And I am looking forward to sharing with you things that I have used to help the organizations, but also to share with the organization what my value is. Part of that comes from me being able to see things that the team, ways that the team has changed, ways that the workflow has changed throughout the organization, to show that this is where the value is of having someone looking at the systems, let's say. Might not be the exact right word, but how the team is doing their work. So I'm happy to share some of that. And Pooja, do you want to add to before we get started into the details?
Yeah, so both of you did a great job just putting up the conversation. But one thing that I want to add to this is I've been on like the staffing side of things too. So just saying like, okay, what are people putting in their job descriptions? Are they just asking for that certification and expecting somebody to walk in and make a difference, right? And to Matthew's point, who joined our call earlier, maybe they initially bring you on as XYZ title, but then, you're expected to do so many other things. And then you're questioning, okay, does this really fall into my role competency? And, to your point of how are you adding value to an organization, maybe you have to take a step back and say, let's look at how I can, because in my current role, I'm not, and involving the right people to get to that next step. So.
Great. So I want to, Jessica asked a question. Agile's being laid off. Well, there have been a good number of high profile layoffs from big companies that were doing larger transformations. Capital One is an example. And yes, there has been layoffs of Scrum Masters, product owners, Agile coaches. Yes, over the last year or two.
And there's also been noticeable reduction in the job postings of the number of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches that companies are looking to fill as well.
Well, we're going to get into that, Jessica, when you're asking the reasons why. Yes, we'll get into that during the call here. So I want to just open up by asking a question to everyone. Hopefully we have a lot of Scrum Masters here today. When you start...
I'm sorry, Joe, can I pause for 1 second? Can we get a show of hands? How many people on the call are Scrum Masters or have the title? Matthew, I'm looking at you, who might either consider themselves a Scrum Master, whether that's your title, or the reverse side, your title is Scrum Master, even if you're being asked to do other things. Just, the category. How many? So we've got 3 so far. 4. Are there other people who are 6? Oh, nice. More hands are going up. Oh, okay. So almost half. I'm curious about the other half of you might be Agile coaches is another kind of category that I'm thinking of. Now, as these hands go down, can we see a show of hands of people who might be Agile coaches? So we have a few of those too.
That's 3.
And David, did you have your hand up on both?
Yeah, I think I saw David's hand on both, and ending with Jessica's.
Which is the part of the my title. I'll share, David, my title when I was hired at my new role a little over a year ago. I was a Scrum Master and Agile coach. We've actually rolled off the Scrum Master part, and my title is focused on Agile coach. But that's also part of the journey. So thank you, Joe, for the pause.
Sure, no, it's good. I'm glad you did that.
Great.
So I want to open up the conversation first, and I want to ask everyone, when you joined your current company as a Scrum Master, what was your expectation of the role? And how did you approach, executing the role of Scrum Master? So I want to start with that. Yeah, Pooja.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to add. I've been at a few different companies over the past 5 years, specifically focusing, and I'll say, if you have 2 different experiences, feel free to share that too, because I think that's going to add some value for the contrast, even just looking at organizations, even though they say one thing, what do you actually end up doing? So just wanted to add that context for anybody who wants to share.
Great. So please, I want to open it up. Someone start the conversation. I'd love to hear your story.
I suppose I could start.
Thanks, Dave.
So I was hired to be a Scrum Master. They were hiring a lot of Scrum Masters at the time. They hired a really strong Agile coach. And I got the impression that they really wanted to really give Scrum a shot in a scaled Scrum at scale model. We actually started out pretty strong. We brought in the Scrum at scale model. I scaled a team of teams. However, I began to observe, actually on the second day, I observed we didn't really bring in product owners. We had managers instead of product owners. And so we never dealt with that obstacle, and we never really truly adopted Scrum. And slowly, since the Scrum Masters didn't report into the infrastructure, to the organization, to the teams, they were more or less ignored, and slowly they just stopped hiring Scrum Masters, and now we have just a few Scrum Masters.
Okay. Well, so David, your expectation was that you would come in as a Scrum Master and do what?
That I would teach them how to do Scrum, and that they would be willing participants, and that where we had gaps, they would try to fill those gaps, like the product owner role. That was my expectation.
So curious. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
So David, I'm curious because you're talking about they didn't fill the product owner role. Did you have an expectation? I guess I'm making assumptions that you had certain expectations about the value of that role, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I'm sort of curious to what your expectations were going into it, connected to a product owner. Like what would you have expected the value? Like what was the gap or what was missing without being able to work with a product owner on the team?
So the product owner role was missing. They had managers in place of a project owner. Everybody reported to that manager, and that manager really had no passion for the product. He was just doing what he was told. And he continued to operate in more of a waterfall mentality where they pushed off any quality concerns that I was raising until the end of the project, or till they finished all their development. They said QA happens after development, and then we promoted a very, very buggy product into production, and been dealing with those issues ever since. I don't know. I probably didn't quite answer your question, Anne, but
you helped us get the picture of the challenge that you experienced. Well, and those of us who are connected with Scrum, I mean, the Scrum Master and the product owner partner. I mean, that's what, a key, at least in my, maybe I should word it, in my previous experiences, it's that partnership with the product owner that is part of what makes that framework valuable.
Thanks, Dave. I want to just get to a couple of chats here. Maria said, good question. Thank you, Maria. Expectations were just to be a Scrum Master, but now I'm a Scrum Master, Kanban delivery, and release manager, all in one role, with a nice smile on her face. So thank you for that. And then Laurie says, I work in the Agile format. I am a consultant where project management is the focus. So thank you, Laurie, for that. Does anyone else? Harvik, yes, please.
Yes, you guys can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so my experience is on the positive side compared to what David shared. My organization is relatively new in Agile in the scheme of things. We started Agile, we were a waterfall shop. We started Agile 8 years or so back. We started with a small group of teams. We had Scrum Masters and product owners. We obviously started in IT realm. And since then, and at that time, the product owners were not dedicated product owners. We had managers who were product owners. We had some business folks who were product owners. And then over time, we solidified the product owner role, which I think is a critical role in Agile transformation. So now we have dedicated product owners. Scrum Masters, we are not laying off Scrum Masters, not convert. We are hiring them if as and when needed. And we've also streamlined the Scrum Master reporting structure. So we are now, we've gone through the forming, norming, those stages, and we are in the performing stages. We are now implementing Agile at scale.
Curious from your perspective, Harvick, do you feel like you're empowered as a Scrum Master? And then in addition to that is, do you feel that the product owners are empowered to actually do the product owner role? What's your thought?
I believe so. No one's perfect, right? And we all have organization impediments. So dedicated teams is one of our organization impediments. Not that we don't have dedicated teams and dedicated resources, we do, but cost always comes in the picture. So do we have budget for it and things of that nature? But other than that, to answer your question, we do feel empowered to make decisions. Obviously not unilaterally, we have to involve stakeholders, senior leadership, but we are getting there.
Nice.
Thank you for sharing that. And Ken Crowley shared this on chat. I was hired at my company before we started our Scrum adoption as a project manager. And currently I have some Scrum Master assignments and some more like a project manager. So he's kind of a mix of both right now. Ken, do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? And like, for example, you said you started at the company before they adopted Scrum, and why did the company decide to adopt Scrum?
Well, that's a good question. I wasn't involved in that. I've been with my company for 16 years. So maybe that puts a little context into like, what do you mean prior to Scrum? Because it was a while ago. And then we had one, I would call it traditionally a program, maybe you'd call it a train these days, and Scaled Agile, which basically pioneered Scrum for better or worse. And there was a lot of resistance, I think, by management to not doing things in a waterfall fashion or not producing tons of documentation, which they had at least tried to before. So I think eventually they saw the benefit of working in smaller increments. Senior management basically adopted it, or at least tolerated it. And that's what we do. And we also do scaled agile. We do safe. So we do kind of like safe light. We try not to impose things. We suggest things. We have certain rituals. So we have the roles, like the train engineer and the product manager and et cetera. But
And how,
we got, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to
Sorry.
say, Ken, how long has your company, how long ago did they start adopting SAFe? And
Yeah, I'd say at least 10 years ago, maybe longer, maybe
Yes.
12.
Okay.
And we're on our third different tool for various reasons. So either it didn't support a scaled agile particularly well, or they found something that was broader, or they found something cheaper. So currently we use Jira, which we used for problem management and its workflow abilities for many years. Probably about 14 or 15 of those 16 years I've been with the company. And so we use the Agile capabilities there in addition to buying a plugin, the Agile Hive.
And one more question. Do you think in the last 10 years, since your company has adopted Scrum and Scrum at scale, have they seen better business results? And can they tie those business results back to the fact that they transitioned from what they were doing before to what they're doing now?
Yeah, I think they've definitely seen better results. And
Okay.
Along with that, like better coordinated releases where they recognize interdependencies and actively manage them as opposed to hoping they don't go wrong.
Yeah.
So I think senior management has acknowledged that they kind of like the structure. Like, for instance, the sprint reviews used to be very popular with our CEO, and she would ask questions which sometimes were directly relevant to the presenter and sometimes just popped in her head. But hey, she's a CEO and the people were there and she asked a question. It's all legitimate. So, and she makes as many of those as she can. We've reduced the frequency of those a bit, but she makes almost all of them, which is a good vote of confidence in the process.
Then
Yes.
Ken, I have a follow-up question for you. When you say some of your PM assignments, what has kind of lingered on since you guys have taken on Scrum that you're still doing in terms of PM-like activities or assignments that you mentioned?
Well, one time we were looking to upgrade our instance of Oracle e-business. So
Okay.
that was definitely a more traditional role of that.
Okay, understood.
Even though there were some very strong people who had a lot of experience even before coming to my company with Oracle e-business, so they knew how to do it. The assignments I have now, I think, fall into the category of, we're not quite sure what a project manager does. Can you take notes? And again, based upon the nature of the projects, I am just glad to help. So just like a Scrum Master, where I said, I'm glad to help. You need help with a tool? Great. You need help understanding what the status is? Fine, great. I can do that too. I'll plug in wherever I'm needed. So I don't actually mind taking the notes. It is valued, and I appreciate the thanks that I get for that kind of work.
Ken, the other thing I'll add to that thought is what I'm hearing is notes are also a form of creating transparency, which is part of what Scrum Masters do.
Agreed.
So I just want to share that. I am not a good note taker, so I don't necessarily, I'm not the one that teams want to help, but I do take notes where it is and where it helps. But the transparency piece, like, is what I'm hearing from you, and that's really valuable as well.
Well, we have a couple of product launches going on at this time, which I'm not at liberty to describe, but they're very fast moving, and they involve very high level senior management direct involvement, that kind of like running herd over the things. And there is a certain degree of uncertainty, which the senior managers are probably better able to handle, and they're doing the best I think anyone can do. So again, I'm just glad to plug in and help them.
Thank you, Ken. That's fantastic. I want to just share what Tony Rook put in chat. and this is something I think we're all probably familiar with. The problem that I have experienced on a number of occasions is that companies flip or rebrand existing employees that were previously project managers. Give them a minimum training. How about like a 2-day Scrum Master class, right? And then let them loose with squads, teams, this regardless of whether those individuals are actually fit for the Scrum Master role or not, and then wonder why they struggle with adoption, quality, and skills. So taking people in your company, giving them a 2-day class and saying, you're an expert, get in there, you know. Eben said, we have struggled with Scrum being what the development teams do and not an overall organizational understanding of Agile. The biggest missing piece is the emphasis on the lack of trust in the teams themselves to make the decisions. Yes. Jessica, you have your hand up. You want to share something?
Yeah, so I'm hearing so many things that are reminding me of a lot of struggles I've gone through over the last 15 years or so. And I'm very lucky that in my current role, it was a greenfield project. So we were starting from the ground up. And for the first time, I got to come in and as a Scrum Master, be the coach and the guide and the teacher and on board, and management was supporting. But in all my other years, I was coming into Scrum teams and Kanban teams that were fighting with each other, fighting with management. So getting in there and trying to help everybody grow and move along. And one of the things that Tony's comment made me think of is a lot of people are thrown into the roles and there is not a Scrum Master community in place. And when I was a brand new Scrum Master, it was just me. And I didn't have anybody to ask for advice, and I was doing the best I can. And finally, one day I said, well, I have to go and educate myself. If I'm going to be good at my job and help people, I had to go out there and find the education. There wasn't a lot online. A lot of people in my area who were having people get together and talk with each other. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges that people will run into. And I spent a lot of time creating communities of practice to get people together and find people more experienced than myself so I can learn. That's not available everywhere. And it's hard to make the time outside of family and just the stuff we have to do to live our everyday lives to go and search it out. And I think that's where we find when we're talking about competency is people don't have those communities available to them to teach and coach and mentor and guide Scrum Masters along their journey.
Thanks for sharing, Jessica. Yeah, I 100% agree that, you know, I resonated with Tony's comment as well, that people were just put into there. And I'm really happy that for the first time, you're really getting to experience like a true Scrum Master role. Do you have a current community of practice that you're able to talk to other Scrum Masters now, or is it still isolated?
We have the biggest community of practice I have ever seen. And like, you know, we have conferences and every week there's another speaker on a great relevant topic. And it's just been amazing to see. And I'm a coach as well. And this is, you know, the first time where somebody's saying, you know, we recognize the coaching role and the importance of the coaching role. And it's great, but I never had that kind of support or that kind of community for all those years before, and was just searching it out and trying to figure out where are my people, you know, where's my tribe who I can talk to about this stuff.
Yeah. And I know like when I was thrown into a role, or if I didn't have necessarily that support system like you were talking about, for one of my first assignments, I had imposter syndrome, right? I was just kind of faking it until I made it and continued to see. And then as the team was learning and they were going through, you know, hey, here are the typical ceremonies, you know, everybody was new to the process at the time. So I definitely was trying to be the face and keeping everybody together. But it's tough when you don't have the support behind you and people have this expectation like, oh, you're a Scrum Master, you should be able to do this, or you were a project manager. They're one for one. They just exactly match. So I completely can understand your situation. And as we see in the chat, there's plenty of people that have experienced the same idea. So Tony, thank you for putting that comment. And Jessica, thank you for sharing your experience. And very happy to hear that you have a wonderful community surrounding you right now. Hope it continues to grow.
And I would like to add to that, I would like to empower the Scrum Masters and the coaches on this call who might not feel that they have that community yet, and empower you to find space in your organization to create the community. It can start with you, I guess, is what I want to, offer and share. You kind of, Jessica, I might have inferred some of that, but you kind of was thinking that you might have been the catalyst. The way you shared that story, I was inferring that you were a little bit of that. You were part of the catalyst to creating that community, is what I was imagining. And I have been a part in the past. I've been at an organization that had a large. It was a mid-sized company, and it had we created a community of practice, and that was really helpful and valuable. Sort of made the space for it. I mean, it can be hard to get the momentum started, but as you find someone to champion it, find from the organization champions that can help support and create the space for you. But as you all come together, sharing challenges that your teams have, being transparent, and within the company that I did it, we had a few different business lines. So we had a large community of practice that was like Scrum Masters across the whole organization were communicating. And then we had sort of subgroups that focused on the different business lines, because different business lines had different business challenges. And so that those smaller groups, and in one that I was in, we were running a group of Scrum Masters. We were running Scrum 1 week sprints, very, very short, but we were using Scrum to align and finding ways to share what our challenges were, find out if all teams were having the same challenges, and in that case, we could, as a joint Scrum Master, we could have that Scrum Master's voice and share with the organization about the impediments and work on different challenges that we discovered. But I want to invite you all to, when we're all busy, or what do we say to our teams when they feel like they have a lot of pressure to deliver, and do they have time for their own training? And we coach them to find that time, find the time. Part of Scrum is being sustainable and discovering how we can recharge, but also learn and improve all of our skills. And it is very hard to fit those spaces in. But I want to challenge you to do the things that we tell our team members to do, and try to find ways. Keep looking for ways and keep looking for opportunities. It's not going to happen right away and immediately, and that's okay, and keep at it.
Yeah, I want to add there that I've set up a lot of community of practices within organizations, but the real value comes from what you learn outside of organizations and bring into your organization. So, I was very lucky. I was struggling the first 5 years or so in my Agile Scrum journey. And then I got into Agile Boston, and I met Dan, and I started coming to the monthly events, and I started getting involved as a volunteer. And then I started meeting Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber and Dave West and all of these people. And you never stop learning in this field. So the first thing I want to say as a competent Scrum Master is, you are not a master by taking a 2-day class. You're not even a master if you take, the PSM1 and PSM2. You're still not a master. You're only a master after you've done this a long time, and you've allowed yourself to evolve in your understanding. Okay, so meeting people, taking advantage of podcasts, not just my podcast that we do at Agile Boston, but also Ryan Ripley and Todd Miller have an awesome, Agile for Humans. They have podcasts. They're available. A lot of these meetups are virtual, not just for Agile Boston, but Agile New England, Agile Maine. And you can go to them, or you can watch the recordings, and you can learn a lot. So I want to say, first, as a competent Scrum Master, you never stop learning. I think that's one thing. I think, Anne, you study martial arts.
Mhm.
You have a sensei, I think, that teaches you things. And one of the things I think your sensei would tell you is that you never stop learning, right? That even he or she as a master never stops learning.
And the martial arts, this is something I've shared with Joe. I'm going to use this opportunity to share with all of you. One of the visuals in the martial arts, in any school you go to, you come in and you all line up. The people to my left are have been training less than I have, and everyone, there are the white belts who came in your first day, your second day. There are those white belts. Everyone started there, and to my left there are people who have been training longer and have more knowledge and are still seeking out additional knowledge. So I have that view to my right of opportunities, and the view to the left is where, you know, opportunities for me to help others. And this I've used this analogy with Joe. This community here, I find that same benefits here. We might not line up. I don't know which of you are brand new Scrum Masters, and well, I heard Ken said he's been at his company for 16 years. I did miss how long he's been the Scrum Master, but has a number of years. So we have collectively right here on this call, we have a lot of experience and a lot of different experience, and that's like really valuable. It's never ending. Kaizen is never ending. It's just part of mastery. Master sounds stationary and like there's a winning point. And I want to correct that thought. There really isn't. It's always ongoing.
Yeah, and I just want to bring it back, sorry, really quick, just with the mentorship. I recently joined the Agile leadership community, even though I, like Joe, was doing volunteer work. But when I even had a lot of questions, I reached out to Joe and I said, listen, this is the situation that I'm in. How do I make sure that I can achieve such, and such? And he was a great help. So talking about those community of practices, about those people, we're all here. Everybody on this call has some kind of experience that they're willing to share, willing to help you with. And even if they're new, that listening to the new experience as somebody who's experienced, like Anne was saying, is super helpful. And on the other end, somebody who has far more experience than you, they can just bring so much value. So please tap into that. It's super helpful.
The next thing that I want to raise, because we've gone halfway through already and we've done a lot of sharing, but I want to get into now like what some of the key points are for a competent Scrum Master. So we covered one, understand that it's not master, it's mastery, and mastery is ongoing, that we learn from a lot of sources. We bring things from the outside into our company that can help. The other thing I want to mention is, as I was listening to some folks talk about their stories, they mentioned things like, well, where I was brought in to implement Scrum and implement Scrum at scale, or I was brought in to teach the people what Scrum is. The issue that I've seen is, I call it the round, the square peg in the round hole. And it's not just for individuals and roles, but it's for frameworks in companies. So whether you are someone like Ken, who was a project manager for many years, and then they adopted Scrum, and okay, now I'm taking on Scrum Master roles, or you're joining a new company or you're interviewing for a company, the first thing you should ask as a competent Scrum Master is, what does transformation mean? Why do we want to do this? What's the business problem we're trying to solve? A lot of companies are built the same way, vertical silos. They've got human resources, they've got development, they've got SRE, they've got even product management on a separate line from engineering, and so forth. And you have all of these strong verticals with hundreds or even thousands of people in each vertical, and tons of entrenched political assignments within those verticals. And whether you like it or not, a lot of companies still work the same way. They design, they develop, they test, they deploy. And so the first thing you have to understand is, if you come in and they say, we want to be a Scrum Master, why? Well, we're adopting Scrum. Why? Well, because what's the reason? Companies say, I want to transform. Okay, where are you today? What's the problem with where you are today? And what do you want to be in whatever time frame you're looking at? What's the problem you want to solve? How do you want to transform? A lot of us, when we walk into a company, we don't know. We don't ask these questions and we don't know these answers. So we end up focusing on the wrong thing. Ian, I think you want to say something.
Well, so I was using my fingers as you were saying why. I was like, you got to 4 whys. And I would, share, ask one more if you want to go with the 5
whys. Yeah.
Additionally, I want to share, sometimes when you do ask those questions, you might find that management says, well, because we're adopting Scrum, like that. They don't have the answers to the 5 whys either. And we want to hope that someone in your organization had that answer. We want to transform so we can be more nimble and respond to market changes faster. I don't know what the answer is, but we want to hope that someone in your organization has answered those questions, but the people that you're talking to might not know the answer, and we can partner with them. If that's the case, I want to suggest and offer the opportunity to partner with them to get the answers and or get an answer that works for you in your bubble, in your whatever your part of the organization's kind of group is, so that you can use those principles to move forward. Because otherwise you're just doing Scrum, you're going through the motions and you're not getting any of the benefits, and Scrum doesn't work as just motion.
And then eventually what will happen is they'll say, gee, I pay all this money for Scrum and I don't see any difference in my business. So out you go, right? We need to understand what the business problem is that they want to solve and why they think Scrum or Scrum at Scale or SAFe is the way to solve it, right? Now I asked Ken that question and he had an answer. And he's been doing this for 10 years. Right? He seems like he's got a lot of stability and the company and the executives see benefit from it. Okay. So there's a positive example where they knew why they wanted to change. They saw the results of that change and they're continuing to do it because it solved the business problem. Tony, I think you had your hand up, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. No, and what you said and what Anne said, just really strike a chord with me. And one thing I think Anne said that really made sort of the cogs in my mind sort of click a little bit is I think part of the problem around that and the competency was, when you say ask why they want to go on this journey, I think a lot of it has to do with the hiring. So we don't have in our haste, and I've seen I was actually on the management side of this for a number of years, but in our haste to do the digital agile transformations in the past, I think on some occasions we haven't had consistent job descriptions, but more importantly, what happens is that people that Scrum Masters from external are looking to hire, sort of work for a company, the people that they're talking with oftentimes don't know the answer to that anyway. And what I mean by that is I've been in organizations where we ended up with such a broad variation. We had Scrum Masters, technical Scrum Masters, even product Scrum Masters, that because we allowed the hiring manager to actually go out and hire without any sort of central coordination with it. And their perception of what the job entitled, and was broadly different, within the organization. So I think a lot of that churn as well, it was, in an organization, we shot ourselves in the foot as a result of that.
And Tony, I want to add, hiring is hard. And I've been kind of looked at it from all angles, been the interviewer, worked with an organization so that we can hire the best skills possible. And even in situations where I have felt supported and that the process was the best process that we could have, it's still really hard.
Yeah, I agree.
But hard things are worth continuing to work on, continuing to ask about and get curious about. Thank you for bringing that perspective in.
So it's really
I'm gonna bring a fun one to this one. I always relate this back to dating whenever I'm interviewing or when I'm interviewing somebody, and the fact that we all have our list, right? So we send out what you're going to be doing on the job, what qualifications you need to have. So that's our dream list, right, of what we have. But somehow what we end up with is completely different. And it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It just means that this is what actually fits the bill. So I always like to, I hate to do this because sometimes it just is a lot of work sometimes that you feel like you're investing with the idea that this person may not be a perfect fit, but by asking the right questions or really understanding, to your point, because depending on where you are in the organization, what this person can bring, right? Maybe they're not just, that T shape or I shape that we always constantly refer back to in terms of who they are or what they can do. And just making sure that, maybe their team dynamics, the way that they work, and just because they have a certification behind their name doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be that perfect person that works for your team. So just something to think about.
Sure. Yeah, so I think it's important for us to understand what is the business objective? Why are we doing this? And what does it look like? Because if we're going to come into a company, that should be our focus. It's not about sprints and stories and user points. If that is not aligned to what the business wants to do, then they're not going to value you. They're not going to value what your team is trying to do. And remember, you're going to come into a company that has a lot of vertical silos that you're not going to be able to break down. Okay? So the first step is, what does transformation look like? What problem you're trying to solve? And why do you think Scrum is going to solve that problem? Okay? So secondly, we need to take a step back and make sure we understand, why are we doing Scrum? We focus so much on the roles or the accountabilities, the events, the artifacts, that we don't take a step back and say, what is Scrum used for? Scrum is used to exercise empiricism so that we can deliver the right value through frequent feedback loops. We're not going to reduce complexity, but we're going to manage complexity and manage risk better by following an empirical process. That's what Scrum is used for. So if Scrum doesn't fit the problem that the company is trying to solve, that should be a red flag to you, as this is not going to be a good situation for me to be in. Okay. Another thing about, well, I want to be agile. What does agile mean? Agile means that we deliver value frequently. My email tagline. Thanks. Agile means that we deliver value frequently, and we frequently inspect the way we do things, and we look for improvement. In other words, we adopt a lean mindset. So we care about frequent delivery of value, and we care about adopting a lean mindset. So if you don't hear in the business problem that we don't deliver fast enough, or you don't hear in the business problem that, we have too much waste and inefficiencies and we want to get rid of them, then again, that should be a red flag to you that, this might not be the right role. I hear people tell me a lot of times, oh, we kind of moved away from Scrum. We're doing Kanban now. And I laugh when I hear this. Because again, what is the purpose of Kanban? A lot of people say we're doing Kanban, and all they're doing is they're making visible a waterfall workflow. But they're not instituting anything that Kanban is used for. And what is Kanban used for? It's used to create a pull system from one state to another. And in the process of doing that, it's used to identify wastes within your flow.
Well, it enables it enables the creation of flow through transparency and visibility, and just a few metrics. But there are 4 metrics.
Right, but
metrics, you're not doing Kanban, just like there are parts of Scrum.
Right. Visualization is one aspect of Kanban, but Kanban is about understanding flow and state so that I can eliminate waste and increase flow. A lot of people don't get that in Kanban. They go, well, I'm using Kanban. Look, I got states and I've got, limits and I can see everything, and we just march through the thing. What have you done in the last year to improve the state? or to improve the flow? Nothing. Then you're not doing Kanban, right? So we have to understand as practitioners what these different tools or frameworks or methodologies are used for, and then make sure that if we're using them, they align to the business objective of the company. And if we do that and we focus on solving the business problems, we are going to be not only competent, we're going to be highly valued. And I feel like a lot of times, and I've been not the victim, what I'm going to say, I've made this mistake as well, where I've gone in and I focus so much on the framework. Oh, okay, we're doing Scrum and Scale, let's go. Oh, we're going to do Safe, let's go. That I lost the big picture and it wasn't a successful engagement. So I want to open it up now for feedback on those couple of points.
I'm going to start off by saying I've definitely been one of those people who's maybe been afraid to ask those questions just because I wasn't sure where it was going to lead to. And maybe they're going to be like, oh, well, maybe we don't need you at all because you're asking the questions that we're afraid to answer that we don't want to address. So having that insight and those key pieces of information, I think are super helpful. But to your point, that value factor, I think, is a big part of the discussion too, right? Because we're always trying to find a way, Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, depending on what it is that the people on the call really are. It's really tough to make sure that you are delivering value unless somebody has helped you define that or you've defined it so then everybody understands what you're working towards. And then, going beyond that, how is it that you can show somebody that, you are going beyond it? So those are just some of the things that come to mind. I know initially when I started my journey, I was very scared. Now it's something I make sure I include so that I can actually march to what needs to be done.
I'll share one of the tools that I use is looking at metrics and just to see where are we improving, where are we today, and then metrics over time to see what is our journey and create transparency. I lean on the 4 Kanban metrics. But I also want to bubble up that we've had Patricia Kong and Ryan Ripley and Todd Miller come and speak about evidence-based management metrics, which are another group of metrics. There are lots of choices to use, but metrics are, there we go. Joe's got the one of the books. Highly recommend all of the above. Find ones that work for you to create that transparency. What is I use the metaphor of a mirror. Where we want to use this to see what is the mirror, what do we look like today, and we can compare that over time. And there, that's Joe's offering a lot of value. But that's just one of the tools that I use. Kind of wanted to share that to see our value, because then we can speak about it and point to facts and
facts that are relevant. I was asked a few years ago at my company, Joe, can you put together some metrics and that we can present to the executive leadership team during our EATs or executive action team meetings? And I said, sure. And I did not think about asking, okay, what's the business problem we're trying to solve here? Because if your KPIs are not aligned to showing progress towards that business problem, then the executives don't know what the heck you're talking about. So I'm showing the executives things like lead time, process efficiency, cycle time, velocity, or acceleration or things like that. And they were like, okay, this is wonderful. What is this telling us? What is this telling us? Because none of these things mattered to them. None of these things mattered to them, because none of these things were solving the problem that they wanted to solve. And they weren't helping them understand whether we're getting there or not. So another key for a competent Scrum Master is make sure whatever you're measuring, it's aligned to showing progress towards achieving the business problem that we're trying to solve. Dan, welcome. I think you want to say something.
Yeah, no, first of all, sorry for me being late. I had a problem over here, but I did catch the very end. So, yeah, the Competent Scrum Master and metrics are probably one of the biggest issues that we have. So, for example, if our goal is to increase the sales of a particular product, say, so many other factors go into that besides what we do with our team. That, I mean, how can we take accountability for that up or down number when it's all these other, it's a confluence of other factors that make the sales go up or down, right? So what you said is really, really important. What is the outcome that we're focusing on here, right? So we're together for a team, as a team. What is the outcome that we desire? If you can't answer that, then you can't really begin to measure anything at all. And in a lot of companies, that's kind of hard to find, the outcome focused goal. I mean, how many people on this particular call are working on a team that has a very, very clear outcome focused, expressed as an outcome goal? Probably less than a third. Anne's got her hand up, but it's not all the way up. It's kind of just up. Right? Anne, you want to tell us about that? What is it? What is the goal? I mean, you don't have to say the company or the thing. Just like, what's the goal?
Well, we look at, we have org level goals, and we are getting there at closing the gap to members know that whatever they're working on, what company value it connects to. When I started, it was a question that we were like, oh yeah, everything we're doing connects to the company values and the org goals, which kind of loosely change yearly. I don't want to say we adjust. We're a startup, so we're a little scrappy. Sometimes we adjust mid-year, but we're helping the teams make those connections, and there are fewer and fewer where we say, oh wait, how does this connect? Because we're focused on it. And the value that I've found or I've seen is now that team members, the people who are doing the actual work, are saying less about I'm fixing this function, I'm creating this new. They talk about the high level company org goal. I'm supporting quality. Data quality is one of our, which sounds, it's more specific to us, but that's what we call it. We have a definition of what that means for us, and they connect to I'm providing value because I'm helping this higher level initiative.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. The Competent Scrum Master, Todd and Ryan have had some posts out lately about how the ideal person to be that your Scrum Master is, guess what role? The
delivery manager
role.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's our mission as Scrum Masters? It's to deliver value that can be measured in business terms. Isn't that ultimately it?
Mm-hmm.
So who's better equipped to do that than someone who is a manager, right? So they're also authorized enough to remove a lot of impediments, right? So in an ideal world, the manager is not unempowered. They are fully empowered to actually remove impediments. So really the big deal is, do they have that Scrum Master mentality, the Scrum Master spirit, right? It's different than a manager type of a spirit, right? It's a certain, the ideal Scrum Master is someone who's empowered to remove impediments, who serves the team. Right. So what if every manager could be like that? That's something Todd and Ryan, I noticed, are talking about across social media lately. Has anyone else seen that?
Well, Jeff talked about it at Rocket Mortgage, that the first thing they did was transform the managers to be the agile coaches and agile leaders. And if they didn't want to do the job, they were moved out and they were moved into another part of the organization.
That's very interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
But that implies that you have someone up here at the C level, the executive level, who understands and is supportive of that. Right? So if you're thinking I'm going to go in as a grassroots, or I'm going to go in somewhere mid-level in that vertical silo that you're in, and the person up here doesn't really care or understand what you're doing, again, probably not a good situation for you. Right?
I'd also like to circle this point back to a place where we started, which is experience. There were some people on the call that were saying how their organization we had PMs and sent them to quick Scrum Master courses and expected them to become competent Scrum Masters. Think about that person's ability to succeed and what we're saying here, like this idea of the delivery manager or managers becoming Scrum Masters, and the skill sets and the skill gaps for success. It just, there are some really talented project managers out there, but that's a big gap. It's a big skill gap.
Yeah, it's a lot to overcome.
Yes.
We're trying to get teams engaged. To engage people, they need to be making decisions. To be making decisions, you cannot be dominating them, and they have to be authorized, right? So it's a lot. It ain't as easy as it looks. Getting people engaged isn't so simple. And once people are engaged, I have a theory about this, right? As Scrum Masters, as competent Scrum people, we want to get that productivity bump. We want to get that improvement bump, the efficiency bump. I think it all comes from engaged people. I think there's a linear correlation between the level of engagement and the level of greatness, basically, right? So letting teams actually decide about the how is something that doesn't really go on very much. If it did, we'd be seeing better results, right? So companies aren't set up for this. Companies are set up for a hierarchy of authority distribution. Why? Because it's easier to manage, right? It's easier to manage. So that, I think this is a fundamental thing as well, is, Joe said, the executive at the top has to have some idea and be supporting and be encouraging and being authorizing of these ideas of, team decides the how, because that's where the real oomph comes from, is engaged people, and that comes from deciding.
So with 1 minute left, I just want to summarize, what we've talked about today. Bringing learning from the outside into your organization, reaching out to different Agile communities, attending talks like this, watching, podcasts on YouTube or whatever you listen to podcasts on. That's one aspect of it. Another thing is to understand that Scrum is an implementation of the Agile mindset. And the Agile mindset is based on frequent delivery of value and constant inspection and adaptation about how we do things, of implementing a lean mentality. Scrum does this by exercising empiricism. The idea that we learn by doing, that we're not going to know everything up front. We're going to be able to better manage complexity. We're not going to reduce complexity, but we're going to be able to better manage complexity and manage risk. Risk of what? Risk of spending a lot of money on something that no one wants, or going down a road that's going to lead to failure. So that's the key. That's the key. So when we're doing Scrum, we make sure it aligns to what the business problem is, and we're focusing on the right things on Scrum. We're exercising that empiricism and lean thinking. Okay, so we're at time. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to remind everyone again, tickets are on sale right now for our 16th annual Give Thanks for Scrum, November 26th, the Tuesday before U.S. Thanksgiving. It is live in person in Burlington, Massachusetts at the Microsoft building. Your tickets are really affordable right now. I think they're only $60 a ticket. You get, you get a whole day event plus breakfast plus lunch. Yeah, we'd love to see you there. If you're interested in group rates, please let me know or Dan know, and we can definitely give you a group ticket price as well. Okay, with that, we'll see you next time, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.